Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this series I'm sharing my trip to the UK, in which in July 2019 I spent 2 days in London, England, and 2 weeks traveling around Scotland visiting distilleries. I took a class at the Edinburgh Whisky Academy and met up with some fellow whiskey tubers. So after attending the diploma in single malt Scotch whisky at the Edinburgh Whisky Academy, in which we also toured Glen Grant Distillery, I headed north to the Highlands and Speyside. It's about a 3.5 hour drive, and my first tour was at Glen Grant Distillery at around 10 o'clock in the morning, so I had to get up bright and early, like about 5:30 in the morning, to make the trek up there. Now the good thing is there's nobody on the road at that time in the morning, so the traffic was clear. But it's quite a drive to drive all the way up there, and the first thing I'm going to do is go to a distillery. But I always like to leave myself a little bit of leeway, because, you know, time-wise, at least a half an hour, because you never know, something could go wrong. Maybe you need to stop for gas, you got a flat tire, whatever. So I leave a little extra early in order to make sure that I get there on time. Now, the most adventurous places to visit in all of Scotland, in terms of whiskey, are definitely the islands. Islay, the Isle of Arran, and as we'll see coming up, the Isle of Orkney. And I haven't been to the Northwest Islands up there yet, but I hope to in the near future. But if you're going to go to just one place and spend maybe a week visiting distilleries, and you want to visit a bunch of distilleries, probably the center of Scotland, the most distilleries, definitely in concentration in area, is in the Highlands, particularly in Speyside. So if I was going to recommend someone go just one place in Scotland, particularly if they're going to take a train or something like that and not drive a car, I would recommend going to Speyside. And Speyside has a unique beauty that is different from all the other regions, particularly different from the lowlands and different from the islands. It's almost as if there's more than one Scotland. There is the Highlands and Speyside, and then there are the islands, and the topography, the climate, and everything else is just very, very, very different. So I had been to the Speyside and the Highlands before. I was there in July 2018, but I was going back to visit more distilleries. And my first stop, of course, was, as I said before, Glen Grant Distillery, which is an absolutely beautiful distillery. So just the little walk to get down to the distillery is really, really, really beautiful. But I then did a tour and then tasted some whiskeys and then bought a couple bottles. This is the Glen Grant. This is a 2008 Rothes Speyside Single Malt Scotch Whisky Limited Edition. This is the 2008 edition, a bottle 51 of 300. This was cask number 0013156, bottled at 57.2% alcohol by volume, and it is aged in bourbon cask and finished in a port cask. I also got this other bottle. This is a Glen Grant 170th anniversary bottle. I will not be getting into that one in this review or video. I'll get into it in another time. But when I taste all these various whiskeys, and I had these two different bottles, was tasting both, and usually what I want to do is just get one bottle from each distillery, something to share as part of my sharing of visiting a distillery. But they were both so good and so unique, I bought them both. The issue, more or less, is rationing space in your luggage. Alrighty, So before I get into these, here is my tour of the distillery. Alrighty, so as I said before, this is aged in a bourbon barrel and finished in a port cask. This is a distillery bottling. It is bottled at cask strength. It was distilled on February 14th, 2008 and bottled on March 29th, 2019, making it an 11-year-old. It is bourbon aged in port cask finish. This is cask number 0013156. There are only 300 bottles, bottled at 57.2% alcohol by volume. This is a 500 milliliter bottle, and generally speaking, it is only available at the distillery shop. However, if you look online, you'll find some secondary shops that might have it available as well. All right, let's get into this. So here's the funny thing. Buy all these bottles, bring them all home. All the information I just provided is not actually on the bottle. I had to look it up online, and so I didn't really remember the finishing on this. So when I first opened it, smelled it, and tasted it, and looked at it, I said, wow, look how ruby color that is. It's almost like the color of a rosé wine, which then made me think, oh, wait a minute, is this a port cask finish? And sure enough, it is port cask. Every Scotch whiskey that I've ever had that has that color to it, it's either a red wine cask finish or it is a port cask finish. So on the nose, you definitely get sort of black cherry notes. There's some blueberry notes, some dark chocolate, almost like a dark chocolate wrapped around cherries, like a maraschino cherry. There's some vanilla, chocolate, a little bit of spice, perhaps some cinnamon, loads of vanilla, light floral notes as well, perhaps some fresh red roses. There's also a little bit of, it reminds me a little bit of Dr. Pepper, soda pop, if you ever had Dr. Pepper. And a hint of malt, but also a little bit of saltiness as well. All right, on the palate. Wow. One more. This is an absolutely delicious whiskey and is really different from a lot of other single malt scotches. On the palate, the nose is confirmed. Black cherry notes. There is kind of a Dr. Pepper character to it. Chocolate covered cherries, vanilla, some spice, some cinnamon, some mulling spices. If you ever had mulled wine, kind of like mulling spices. It does have a little bit of a tingle, as you might expect, at that ABV. Nice caramels. And on the back end, on the return, I'm getting a repeat of the floral notes. It's like a red, fresh red roses. And in some sense, it also reminds me a little bit of a candy bar as well. It's like chocolate and nougat and nuts and so forth. And a little bit of that salty character to it as well. This whiskey will do just fine on an ice cube or with a little bit of water. An absolutely superb whiskey that is so very different than from everything else that tends to be. When you're looking at Scotch whiskeys, you're looking at bourbon casks and sherry casks, right? The red wine finished casks or the port finished casks are few and far between. So It's an absolutely spectacular whiskey to put something different into your collection or into your whiskey library to provide a different profile. If there's any other whiskeys that are going to be similar to this in terms of flavor, I would say probably some of the Long Grow Reds from Campbellton, although not with this intense of alcohol, not with this much power and punch, but in terms of a general profile, very, very, very similar to some of those. Really, really, I would say particularly the Malbec of the Long Grows, absolutely spectacular. Now, what would I give this in terms of a score? I'm going to give this a solid 93 points. 93 points, and it's another contender for my top 10 for 2019. And it's not just a matter of who gets the highest points. It's the fact that this whiskey is so different from so many others that I may even, a whiskey that was a sherry cask finish that had higher score, I might place this one higher on that simply because it's such a unique and different profile. Alrighty, that's it for this review. However, when you visit Glen Grant Distillery, there's more than just sort of the beautiful entry to the distillery and the fantastic tour of the distillery. They also have a little cafe there as well that you can eat lunch, and they have some really beautiful gardens to explore. So I'm going to show you my gardens, and we'll finish out the video with that. All right, until next time, cheers. Hey, if you liked my review, be sure to check out these other whiskey videos.